So it's come to my attention that there was a meeting held by more than one board member outside of the public. And I'm not trying to harp on this issue, but we just can't do that. And
let me interrupt you. We
well,
went through
hold
this.
on, just 1 second.
Okay.
The law is just really clear that even if you call it a fact-finding meeting, you still have to announce it to the public and let the public know that it's going to occur. And it should also be, positive to the whole board that they could attend. I don't want the town to get in trouble for an open meetings violation, because eventually, if we continue to not follow the law and hold unlawful meetings, it's going to happen. And that's my fear, because I would hate for the town to take some action that then becomes invalidated based on that fact.
This is from MTAS. We've gone through this before, and I talked to an MTAS lawyer who said I was not guilty of any wrongdoing. Here we go once again.
You cannot hold meetings outside the public.
I didn't hold a meeting.
If two aldermen go somewhere, it's called a meeting.
No, it says, meeting does not include any on-site inspection or any project or program not gathering information for the purpose of fact-finding.
But you have to notify the public that you're going to have this on-site inspection or fact-finding expedition.
It's done all the time, and that's exempt from it. That's just like us going to look at the structure of a building. If it's brought to our attention, we can go.
You should not attend as a group.
Let me ask who all went to look at the dog shelter. I wasn't invited.
Any property that you inspect as a group here is exempt from the Sunshine Law. You cannot discuss what you're voting on or try to persuade a vote.
You can't talk about it. You couldn't have any discussion on it amongst the board members if it's a matter of public concern.
Well, I've got a lot to add here.
That's fine.
Anyway, we went to Brenda Parker came to the office and talked to me at Lynn. She was very upset. Now, this is a letter that was sent to the
Well, she shouldn't have ever come to your office.
Well, that's neither here nor there. I have a lot. You'd be surprised what we have to listen to from the public. Anyway, I was given a copy of a letter that was sent to one of the aldermen here. Cheryl Parker died October 2020. He was very sick the last few months of his life, and his wife Brenda was his caregiver, along with some help from their son. The last few weeks, Cheryl was also seen by hospice nurses. At this time, there was a bear coming around their house. Their son took the trash home with him, so there was nothing to put in trash cans. They would hear it and smell it at night. Now, I don't know how many of you all know, my stepmother worked in Gatlinburg, and she would walk home at night, and the men told her that she worked with, if she smelled something really stinky, like bad trash, rotting trash, that was a bear, and she needed to get somewhere. So this is true about smelling it for us that can smell. They called the TWRA, and they offered to give them a gun and some rubber bullets. The hospice people were very nervous when they had to come after dark. This is where Mr. Housewright comes into play. A woman named Emily works in the office with Housewright. She complained to him that the street light near her house was bothering her by shining in her window. She lives across the street from the Parkers. So without saying anything to Cheryl and Brenda, Mr. Housewright has the power company come and remove the light from the street. Cheryl Parker had the pole and the light put up years ago and paid the monthly charge. When another mayor was here, he said that wasn't fair for them to pay for the street light and had the charge for the light put under the city. You can see why Brenda Parker was very upset to find out why it was taken down and was told because it bothered Emily. Brenda asked him to have it put back because it was much needed with people coming and going at different times, and they were all afraid of the bear or bears. He told her no, it would not be put back. She told him she would pay the bill just to get it back. He told her he would not help her. She told him that Cheryl was dying and about the bear being close. He told her I'm losing my place here. He told her he knew about the bear and that Cheryl had hospice coming to the house, but the light would not be put back. Brenda called the power company to get a light. Brenda called the power company to get a light that she would pay for, and they said it would be a couple of weeks before they would get it back up. When she told them what was happening, they had the light back up in about 2 hours. Of course, Brenda's paying the charge for it now. What kind of city manager would do that to an elderly couple at such a traumatic time? By the way, the man from the power company told Brenda that the light was not shining in Emily's window, and he took pictures before removing it. Some of this other stuff I don't really want to say. Also, Emily told Mrs. Parker that she had gone through the city files looking for receipts on building permit for a brick wall the Parkers had built in front of their house. She told Brenda they did not get a permit and she would see that the wall was torn down. Is it lawful for an employee to be going through files of citizens? Now, this wasn't the end of this. The lady called me again, and she was upset because a curb had been put in front of Emily Wood's house. She was concerned that the water flow would shift from that side of the road over to her house and start to undermine the dirt that supports her big wall, and it is a large brick wall. So I asked Darby if he'd want to go with me to go look at this little piece of curbing. It's not very large, but I was told that there were caves behind her property, somewhere over in this neighborhood. Now, I don't know a whole lot, but I'm thinking that if there is a cave somewhere behind her property, that the water flow naturally goes toward those caves. I don't know. I think that's how you get caves to begin with, is the water erodes, it goes and settles and keeps eroding. I'm not qualified to say for sure, but my husband, he went with me. He says, I don't think it's going to be an issue, but with no rain, it doesn't want to rain in Mount Carmel for some reason. I don't think we're ever going to know the answer until we have a really good rain once again, maybe in the winter. I think maybe it'll start raining in the winter. I hope. We need some water, but this is how this came about. There was no deliberation, no big secret. This was a lady who feels she's being mistreated by our city administrator.
I guess.
Let
I felt like I had no choice.
Hold on.
I felt like I had no choice but to go. I'm not going to. We are elected to represent the people.
I understand that. Just here's my concern. A citizen brought a concern to you.
Yes.
It is a matter of public concern. It is literally her request that the board do something about this.
That's why she called me.
Well, if you're meeting about something that may come before the board for consideration, that is the problem. Because if you, I know you didn't have any deliberation. That's not the point. Had you talked about the curve with Alderman Patrick out there, and then it later came before the board, and the board takes action, we could get in trouble for that. Because the meeting occurred without notice. And I understand that you can have site inspections for ongoing projects or programs. That's what the law states. This isn't a project or a program of the town. And so
It's a dispute between
I guess the law, unfortunately, in this, I don't necessarily agree that this is that big a deal. But eventually it may be. And the last thing I want to have happen is the town to get dinged or drawn into court over something that could have been avoided.
Well, let me ask you this. How should I have handled this differently?
Well, I can answer
You could have
that.
brought it before the board at this meeting.
Us as a board, our job is to make policies. When something like this comes up, we need to turn it over to the supervisor, which would have been Jason here. Then Jason then in returns goes to Mike, and they settle this.
But-
That, not us, and especially as a group.
That's still, I mean, I understand your concern though. Your point is
That she had already come to my
is that
house right.
your point is that you didn't have faith in the system to do what you think it should do. So my alternative would be to place it on the agenda, and then we can discuss it here. And then if there needs to be, a visit out there, the board can go collectively to gather information. It can be noticed to the public, and then we eliminate that concern. So it's not necessarily that anything was wrong that was done, but it's just a procedure. And I understand that it may be elevating form over substance in terms of the law, but sometimes the law just does that.
Well, let me ask a question here.
Okay.
When you went to look at the animal shelter, who exactly went with you?
I was there with Mike and Kenny when I went.
So no other alderman went with you?
I went on my own.
I went with Mike and Kenny. We all had separate appointments, but they was there when I was there. Then when I left, I think John went by a couple hours later there. Yeah, he went like at noon and I went at 1. But yeah, them two was only went in. I think the woman who worked there was already found. Just took them 3.
And was that it? Pet Works? Is that what we're talking
No.
about?
How bad the shelter
But we
was.
had discussed that in the meeting though, hadn't we? The people were gonna go? No? Okay. Well, if they went separately, I guess it doesn't matter. But like the Pet Works is a good example. We talked about it and then everybody was able to go collectively because it had been noticed.
Well,
And it's purely procedural in nature, is my concern. Because that's just the way that the court's gonna look at it, potentially.
So are you
Well, and I
saying
have-
that I could never have went to her house by
No,
myself?
you could have gone by yourself. It's not, if you had gone separately and then Alderman Patrick had gone, everybody could have gone individually. The concern is more than one alderman, because that's where the law places its
it keeps
concern,
us out of being-
because it wants to eliminate the possibility that deliberation towards any sort of public decision could happen outside the public. You would be totally free to go by yourself.
If we have a issue that we need to look at something,
Yeah.
say if tonight, we decide we need to go look at something tomorrow or after the meeting, as long as it's publicized in here.
And then you don't deliberate in any way towards it, I think that it should be okay.
So roughly, we would have every 2 weeks with our workshop, if something needed to.
You could announce that I think the board needs to go look at X. You couldn't vote on it obviously because it'd be in the
Right.
workshop, but that would be a great
Just
forum.
like a citizen wanted all of us or whatever to come and look at something.
That'd be a great forum to announce that. I
No
agree.
more than 2 weeks, roughly, than we can do.
See, when I get calls, I always call the supervisor. I've called Kenny probably 10 times this month already. And then I've called Jason, and I'll leave it up to them because, in other words, I want them to get fussed at, not me, I guess. But no, but they are the supervisors, and so therefore they can handle it more than we can handle it. And by all means, not take anybody with us.
So I'm not trying to
It's
come
not
down.
that I'm just
I'm really
Oh, I
not.
know you're not. I'm just saying that.
I understand, and I hope that I've cleared it up
Yeah.
a little more.
And you're used to in the past.
Well,
doing
let me
what you need to do.
bring this up. She said that she would go to the supervisor of the department. Mike Housewright told them they couldn't talk to me at the sewer plant, didn't they, Mr. Peavy? And you said, and I called really
Oh.
upset.
No, let's back up. Let's back up. What I said to Mr. Cox was because you were asking certain questions. You were asking a lot of questions that frankly should have been directed at me. And what I did was I advised Mr. Cox that if you had questions, that you should come talk to me.
The questions I asked were what we had over there, like the filters.
But
To me, and I talked to you about that, I said I wanted to talk to somebody about it who knew what they were talking about. You don't operate a sewer plant. I don't operate a sewer plant. The people who work there were the ones who could explain the process and the parts. That's what I was asking questions about.
Well, and Vice Mayor, there's a couple things here. Without diving too deep into the sewer plant, with the exception of Mr. Hellstrom here, I don't think there's anybody in this room right now that knows more about the sewer plant than I do.
You was up there, how long? Last week, a whole week, wasn't you? Or a week before last?
A while, but there needs to be lines of communication between, if you have questions about operations, the person that to fill those questions is the city manager. Now, we've gotten sidetracked over onto the sewer plant. You said that you had invited Darby to go out there, or Alderman Patrick. What board members did you invite to go out?
I asked John, he was the one that had, well, I'll just say, he's the one who received the letter to begin with, so I thought he might be a little bit more familiar with the situation.
Okay.
He did know about the light.
Right.
He said he thought there was no problem there.
Yeah.
The light's back.
Well, was there another board member that you asked?
I asked Jim, I thought he might go, but he didn't want to go. John didn't want to go.
Why not ask all board members? If this
Well,
is
I thought Stephen might be working and be busy. I didn't think Pat would go, or
And I was
Mindy, I
tied
didn't
up.
think they'd go.
well, there's a few
But I
things.
wouldn't have
There's a
went.
few things at play here. There again, wastewater. With Mr. Pishner not being in the room, or not wastewater, but stormwater. I am the most knowledgeable person in this room right now on stormwater. If you receive a complaint from someone regarding stormwater, I would again implore you to have a discussion with me. There's a few things, several things at play. One, you stated that you'd received numerous, or at least a couple of complaints about Miss Wood. Did you make any attempt to speak to her about it?
No, it wasn't against her, it was against you.
Well, no. You said specifically that
Oh, in this
you
letter?
had received in your communication with aldermen setting up this meeting that you had received 2 prior complaints against Emily.
No,
Well,
really.
was there at any time a thought that perhaps you should maybe talk to the employee or talk to her supervisor before going to her house on a Saturday morning?
All I did was go stand in the road till her daddy came out, which I thought was unusual, that he appeared to be waiting for us. And he talked to us and asked if we were aldermen. I said yes, and I said we come to look at this little curb, and he said, who complained? I said, I can't tell you that. I said, I've heard there's a cave. Can we look to see if there's a cave here? And he walked with us to the backyard and talked
So
to us.
you asked to go onto her property?
Yes, he asked us to.
It's not his property.
Well, the daddy came out. Daddy
Because
came
she
out.
was
and talked to
Why
us.
would you go to an employee's
She
house?
was done.
I didn't
I-
go to her house, Mike. I
You
went
were
to the
standing in
road.
the road in front of her house.
Yes, I can do that.
Yes, you can, but should you?
Why shouldn't I? I had a complaint from one of these
Why
people.
wouldn't you talk to the employee?
Pardon?
Why wouldn't you talk to an employee?
Why would I? Because you told me you didn't want me talking to employees at one time. Didn't you, Mike? Didn't you, Mike?
Vice Mayor, if you will talk to anybody that works for this city rather than calling private meetings, I would be thrilled.
Well, the employees, and I'm not gonna mention those names for sure, they told us they were afraid to talk to the alderman because of you. Yes, they did,
No.
Pat. I won't tell you who they were.
Hey, I got a question on this. Why wasn't the board notified if they was going to do something for a town employee, like putting a curb down through there? Maybe they should have brought that up, so we're going to curb that down through there.
Why would we?
How many has
Why
Tracy
would-
We don't
done?
ever anybody else?
In the past 4 years, we put
It
12
don't look,
such.
it don't look the best.
No, it doesn't look the best when we have board members that show up in front of a employee's house. This was
Also in the middle of the street, it ain't nothing to you or them.
I would beg to differ. If I look out my front window or my front door on a Saturday morning and I see board members in the street in front of my house, yes. And while we're talking about that, I so don't want to say this publicly, but apparently I'm going to have to. Not everybody wants to come work at the town of Mount Carmel. I'm sorry to say that recruiting quality employees is difficult.
Because we have meetings like this.
Well, it doesn't help when you have board members getting in the middle of a neighborly dispute and showing up at an employee's house. I would not blame Miss Wood if she walked into the office and said, you know what? I am sick of this. It is completely unacceptable behavior to have board members coming to her home.
And it's not unusual. It's
She's
happened before.
she's not just a board member, or she's not just an employee. She's a taxpayer.
And
Now
former board members.
And former board members. This is nothing more than a neighborly dispute. And had the workforce, me or Emily, been contacted, been given the general courtesy of letting us know what would happen, we could explain that. Case in point, and I'm sorry, Alderman Gibson, to bring you into this. You raised a question with Alderman Gibson. He had questions. Could you explain the course of action?
Kind of what happened with that, I did get that email that you read, and I brought that to the city manager and asked for him to elaborate on it. He told me what I needed to know about it, didn't think anything was there, didn't action any further. And then when it came to going to look at the asphalt, as soon as I figured out what was going on, I picked up the phone and asked if this was, for one, going to violate the sunshine law. That's the first question I believe I asked you. And then second was, what's going on with that? Can you explain it to me? And do we have examples of other people doing it before? And I believe you said 14 or so?
At least a dozen.
At least a dozen. And that was the end of it. I drove up there and saw it myself one day. Didn't even drive down the street, but I could see it from the road. You know, it's this much asphalt to grow above the ground. It's really something that should be much out, not even on our level of getting this much attention.
But it is from that lady because she feels like she's being discriminated against.
Emily could say the same thing.
Well, no, nothing, Mrs. Parker's not have anything done to her house by the town, other than to take the request that the light be taken away.
Well, Emily could
Vice
bring a
Mayor.
charge of harassment
Vice
too on
Mayor,
that.
you-
because
And
you're
I'd say
charged.
she can too.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor,
They
this, and I don't want to further this discussion and take us deeper down this road, but I guess I'm going to. Ms. Parker has lodged numerous complaints against myself and Emily, going back well before Emily ever worked here. It is a neighborly dispute. What you have effectively done is taken a neighborly dispute involving a town employee and elevated it to the level of a public meeting.
No,
And
I
all of-
didn't, Mike, you did. You could have talked to me about it behind closed doors.
You didn't. I didn't know
Yes.
anything. I didn't know about it until you were setting up a
We
meeting.
postpone this to workshop,
No.
because it's nothing we can vote on.
Yeah, I think we're in the
We can sit
weeds.
here and argue at this all night, and not get nowhere, and if
Yeah.
there's not a
As a matter
complaint of the sunshine law, we're just sitting here, but.
Yeah, I think that I've addressed my points.
Well, I would like to say, as a matter of common courtesy, somebody should have talked to that lady.
I have spoken with her.
You told her you were gonna take the light down before you did it? No.
Look,
What about the
look.
curbing? Well,
Th-
we'll
this-
just
this-
forget it. We'll just
Well,
forget it.
I'm sorry.
The best thing to do is not get two people together and go to see somebody, because that would be considered as a meeting.
Make a motion to postpone this to workshop, and we'll discuss it then.
We got a motion on the floor.
I made this second.
We got a second. We have a vote. All in
Yes.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.